Vegas Legal Magazine.
I'm Tyler Morgan.
Bureau Communications Vice President.
Jeff Haney.
Hello everybody, welcome to the Vegas Legal Podcast. Law, business, lifestyle. We talk about the things related to the profession in Las Vegas, the law, the courts, the legislature, cool things, and big wins in the local legal community. Just as important, we'll talk about national topics that will be affecting us here in Southern Nevada and the rest of the country. We want to know if you have topics for upcoming podcasts. Thanks for joining us today. Facebook, ubiquitous social media phenomenon that has changed the way the world communicates. With 1.23 billion monthly active users, Facebook connects us all, and it provides an opportunity in marketing unlike anything the world has ever seen. For today's podcast, we're sitting with nationally recognized attorney Robert Eglet, who is suing Facebook. Thanks for joining us, Rob.
Thank you for having me.
The thrust of that lawsuit, that Facebook grossly exaggerated its efficacy in paid marketing, allegedly by as much as 80%, according to the company's own admission. Bottom line, those who paid for advertising on Facebook were seriously misled, according to this lawsuit, about the online juggernaut and the way that its video advertising is used. It doesn't stop there. That case spawned a second lawsuit on behalf of Facebook shareholders. If you own shares of Facebook, you'll be very interested in what Robert Eglet has to say and what he has to say in this lawsuit. Robert Eglet, a well-known attorney in the Las Vegas community, is twice voted National Trial Attorney of the Year. Eglet Prince firm is best known for its multi-million-dollar verdicts, including 2 verdicts in excess of $500 million against a major international company. Robert Eglet, senior partner at Eglet Prince Law Firm in Las Vegas. And one point of disclosure, I'm one of the lead plaintiffs in the firm's case against Facebook. So let's talk about the genesis of that case. Where did this start?
Well, it started with a problem with Facebook's view metrics for their video advertising. There was an article released in the Wall Street Journal in September of last year where Facebook quite incredibly admitted to the Wall Street Journal that they had exaggerated the view metrics of their video advertising that they've been selling their customers by 60 to 80% over a 2-year period. Online marketing, online advertising has almost taken over the advertising industry. If you look at the amount of online advertising that was done just last year alone, it was more than $76 billion worth of advertising, and 27 million of those dollars Facebook captured, and over 97% of that was from their advertising on Facebook. And so these aren't small potatoes when we talk about them exaggerating. When people were purchasing their video advertising, they weren't getting what they were paid for because it was exaggerated by Facebook from 60 to 80%. One of the differences, one of the problems with Google and Facebook and all the online media is that they don't have the same checks and balances that other media outlets have. For example, if you buy advertising on TV, if you buy a particular time on a particular network or cable show in a particular day of the week, let's say you buy advertising for Sunday night at 8 o'clock on CBS, you buy a 30-second spot. Well, you know from an independent rating system called the Nielsen ratings how many viewers are going to be watching that show. So you're going to know how many potential people are going to see your ad. The problem with the online media and Facebook specifically is there has not been any third-party agency who is verifying, well, how long are the view metrics? If you buy, $10,000 worth of advertising, video advertising on Facebook, how many people are actually going to view your video? And what came out is that they were exaggerating it by 60 to 80%, and the way they were exaggerating it was that they were not including in their calculations anybody who viewed their video for less than 3 seconds. Well, if you're on Facebook and a video advertisement pops up, And if it's there for a fraction of a second, which it often is, and people click off of it, they go past it, they don't watch it. So they weren't counting that when they were telling their customers, this is the average length people are viewing your video. Well, that would be the same scenario if a Major League Baseball player didn't count his strikeouts in calculating his batting average. He'd have the highest batting average in Major League Baseball history on average. So it's a substantial thing. And so later there was another article posted in the New York Times about this as well. And so we filed a class action lawsuit in federal court in San Francisco, which is where the jurisdiction for this case is, in October of last year. Since that time, of course, it's had a lot of exposure. There has been some copycat lawsuits filed, but we were the first to file.
They're essentially cut and paste lawsuits, right?
Yeah, some of them, yeah. But we, since that time, my firm, because this is a very, very large case, it has national ramifications. We have teamed up with two other major law firms, one in San Francisco and one based in New York City and Washington, D.C. And we just, in fact, consolidated, the judge just signed an order consolidating our cases together, and we're moving forward on this case over the next few months.
Let's jump ahead, skip ahead. This spawned a second lawsuit,
It
and
did.
that was their reaction, Facebook's reaction to learning about these metrics and how far off they were.
Well, in fact, it wasn't actually their reaction to learning about these metrics. They knew about these metrics, we believe, long before they admitted them to the Wall Street Journal. There has been pressure for a number of years for Facebook and Google and the other online media advertising to allow a third party like the Nielsen ratings for TV to come in and measure how long people are actually viewing their videos, how many people are actually seeing their print advertising when they buy advertising on Facebook. And they resisted this for quite some time. Finally, I believe in about in January or the early part of 2015, Facebook finally agreed to allow a third-party entity to measure how many people were looking at their advertising and how many people were looking at advertisers' videos and for how long. But then, actually, they decided this, I should say, back in 2015, and then but they wouldn't allow them to come in and start doing it until the early part of 2016. And then when the third-party company came in to do this, Facebook wouldn't provide them with the data or access to the data. So the third-party company had to build their own database, is our understanding, and that took 8 or 9 months for them to do that. Well, in the meantime, we believe that the shareholders, some of the major shareholders, and particularly some of the board members, including Mark Zuckerberg, they of course knew about this. They knew these view metrics weren't right. They knew that they were making billions and billions of dollars annually off advertising on Facebook, and they knew that when the actual view metrics came out, and that this could, in all likelihood, affect stock prices for Facebook. So what we discovered from some research is that Mark Zuckerberg and a number of his board members started selling off millions of shares of Facebook stock.
And then
the announcement came out, and in November of last year, Facebook stock dropped dramatically as a result of it. So you can't do that. That is illegal if that's what they did, and there's SEC rules regarding that. It's insider trading. And so people who purchased stock during a certain period of time or held Facebook stock during a certain period of time and weren't privy to this knowledge, weren't able to take action and sell their shares when the price was higher, they lost a lot of money.
And as I understand it, so Zuckerberg, these other founding members of Facebook, and we're talking about millions and millions of shares trading hands, millions and millions of shares being sold off. There's a third.
Hundreds of millions of dollars, possibly
Represent.
more than that.
And your third quarter report comes out. It doesn't mention.
Yeah, the third quarter report in 2016 comes out, and part of that with the SEC filing rules is you have to disclose things like potential lawsuits. You have to disclose things that might negatively affect your stock, and they didn't disclose this to their shareholders.
And to be clear, because the way the story originally comes out, you don't see a giant posting from Zuckerberg saying, we have found a problem, and because we want to be as transparent as possible, this is what happened, this is what we believe happened, this is how we're rectifying it. They get outed by the Wall Street Journal, and essentially simultaneously the New York Times within hours of that. They'd been working the story for some time, but it basically had to be pried out of them by investigative reporters.
Well, I don't have personal knowledge as to exactly how the investigative reporters got this information and got it out of them, but they obviously did. They reported it, in the front page of their newspapers, and the report, from what we understand, the report was provided to Facebook from the third-party company at the end of August of last year, and it was in sometime, I think, in middle or latter part of September that the articles came out in the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times.
So there's always a race to see who is that handles the class action lawsuit. Tell us a little bit about your firm's background in terms of handling this type of nationally significant case.
Well, again, my firm has handled a number of class action lawsuits. One of the most recent ones we handled that was just settled the latter part of last year was we sued Xerox for their mishandling of the rollout of the Affordable Care Act in Nevada, which affected in excess of 6,000 residents. We brought a class action on behalf of the residents who actually purchased online and paid for health insurance that they weren't given. They didn't get the health coverage they were provided and went without coverage for months. Some of these people went to get treatment and couldn't get treatment, and there was some devastating impact to them. We also filed a second class action against Xerox on behalf of the insurance brokers who signed all these people up, assisted these people. They went through a training course to assist these people and sign them up for their insurance, and they didn't get paid their commissions. And so we sued. We ended up settling both cases the end of last year, and right now we're in the notice stage of that. We handled, obviously, the largest hepatitis C outbreak in U.S. history, which occurred here in Las Vegas, or medically caused, I should say, hepatitis C outbreak, which occurred here in 2008. I tried several of those cases to verdict, and then they finally settled with us in 2012, I believe. But these are the type of cases we do. We do a lot of class actions and multi-district litigations against pharmaceutical companies or against other businesses who are engaging in improper or sometimes unlawful business practices that affect both their shareholders and their consumers. We have a lot of experience, but this just like the Viewmetrics case, this shareholder case is going to be an enormous case. So what we do when we handle these type of cases is we team up with at least one other, if not a couple other large law firms in the country that work with us on the case, and we're in the process right now of vetting those firms.
So on the second lawsuit that involves shareholders, well, the first one is first in line, the first in time and filing, and the second seems to be is it literally the volume of shareholders that you represent?
Yeah, partly. The difference too about those two cases is the View Metrics case, the video metrics case against Facebook was filed in district court, federal district court of in Northern California in San Francisco, because when the customers purchased their video advertising from Facebook, part of the contract said that if you do sue us, if there's any litigation, then jurisdiction will lie in the Northern District Federal Court of California, which is based in San Francisco, so that court has jurisdiction. With the shareholders case, that can be filed in any district court. So we filed that in the district court here in Nevada, across the street from my office. So we filed that.
His office is about the size of the district court.
Locally, and so yeah, it's a little bit different in the sense that, you know, when the judge determines who lead class counsel is, there's a lot of factors that go into it, but one of the factors that go into it is who represents the largest volume of shareholders. So, you know, while we represent a number of shareholders now that we've signed up as clients, we're looking to represent and talk to anyone who owned Facebook stock within the last 3 years, who owned 5,000 shares or more, because those individuals or entities will have what we call kind of be in the driver's seat of the case. They'll be the lead plaintiffs in the case. And so, yeah, obviously right now it's the early stages of the case. We filed an amended complaint. We have now served Facebook with the complaint, but it's in the early stages of the case, much earlier than the metrics case that we're doing. And so we're still accepting new clients at this point.
I have a question. On the metrics case, how many claimants are you guys anticipating representing?
Well, this is a national class action, so when you think about it, Facebook did $27 billion last year alone in advertising on Facebook. I'm not sure how much of that was video advertising versus print advertising, but essentially it's everybody who purchased video advertising on Facebook from during this 2.5-year period of time. Well, there's going to be some entities, like large companies, who may have purchased hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, maybe millions of dollars per year in Facebook video ads, but also there are mom and pop shops or individuals who have purchased video ads. They may have spent $1,000 in video advertising. So there's a whole range of all of those advertisers. The number that is at this point would be a wild guess on my part. We'll get that information once we get discovery, which we get into discovery in the case with Facebook. We'll get that information, but at this point, you know, it could be the number of people in this class could be over 1 million people.
I'd be interested to see how many people increase their budget for marketing on Facebook just because they were under the belief they were getting such great views.
Well, we know that trend has been occurring. There has been vast amounts of advertising dollars moving from TV and cable and newspapers and magazines to online marketing over the last number of years at an exponential rate. You know, I think some of the news stories I've seen is they expected online marketing dollars, advertising dollars spent on online marketing to actually surpass all of TV and cable TV.
For the first time ever.
For the first time ever.
The digital advertising on the web is unbelievable now. I mean, you have people spending tremendous amounts of money on Yelp, Facebook. I mean, on Instagram. I go on Instagram now and I'm seeing video clips and advertisements nonstop. So these independent, companies are coming in to analyze the metrics. I would imagine soon they're going to be going after the Yelps, the the state of Google's.
Well, you know,
looking at some of these other
there's
services.
been in the news lately it looks like Google was suffering from some of the same problems that
Yeah.
Facebook was suffering from. There's been recent news on that. We're looking at that as well. But yeah, I think that first of all, there's going to be a real market for these third-party verifying companies like the Nielsen ratings for online advertising. There has to be, because the consumers have to be able to know and have comfort with it. I mean, right now, when you try to get information about how long people or how many people are viewing your videos your advertising videos on Facebook, you know, you had to rely on what Facebook tells you, or just go on Facebook and ask other people who do video advertising and ask, you know, well, what kind of responses you're getting. There's just no independent, reliable third party who can give you what the true facts are.
Yeah, and that's scary because you really have the will of Facebook to tell you what your stats are. There's probably people listening right now that are thinking, holy cow, I just wrote another check for $1,500 or $2,000 to my ad on Facebook. And they're realizing right now that what they see at the end of the day is possibly completely off by as much as 60%.
Could very well
That's
be
scary.
60 to 80% could well be, and part of the issue is, and as a Facebook user, as an advertiser, I can tell you, there is no transparency there in terms of being able to reach anyone at the company. You're not getting Mr. Zuckerberg or any one of his executives on the phone ever. All of digital marketing, what's starkly different, the single, as a user, as a buyer, somebody that sends in money, the thing that is starkly different is you can always talk to a human being when you're buying television advertising. They will jump down your office, and newspapers the same. You buy Wall Street Journal and they're right there. But when it comes to these online services, and Facebook in particular, it's as if they throw down a claim that they have no interest in customer service. And what you do is you end up, when you have a question.
What do they fear? That somebody else is going to come in and have better customer service than them and going to knock Facebook out? I mean, Facebook is sort of, you know, it's the gorilla in the room. I mean, who's taking it out?
And it is, to its credit, to Zuckerberg and the rest of the creators, to their credit, they have come up with something that is so different, and it is such a compelling framework. But even now, it seems like with what you heard from measure the measurements, and we've got some bad news for you, and everybody sells the stock. And they don't take out a full page ad in the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and say, here's an issue, we want to deal with this. And this is how we intend to deal with it, or we're going to be announcing how none of that. Instead, they end up answering the phone to a Wall Street Journal report.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because, Robert, it sounds like you could be on the front line of starting a new wave of, you know, this third-party
Amazing.
like, yeah,
Nielsen.
Yeah.
Actually, you know, the truth is that Nielsen, we do know now, it was Australia, wasn't it, Jeff? And they make it, Nielsen says it's worse than that.
Really?
Yeah, and Nielsen, it looks like they will be possibly one of the companies who is a little bit involved, but they are going to increase their involvement when it comes to measuring these metrics online, including Facebook. It looks like Facebook has said they are one of the companies they're looking at. Not a surprise, because the clamoring for this in the advertising digital media industry is growing louder and louder by the day. The major professional organizations, the major firms, the leaders in that industry are saying more and more consistently, we need a reliable third-party outfit to measure these metrics, kind of like the way Nielsen has done in television for so many years.
Well, and the unfortunate thing about, and I'm a free market believer, you know, I believe in the free market, I believe in the American way of doing business, but the unfortunate thing is that to give businesses, particularly very large businesses, that push to, you know, encourage them or enlighten them or get them to start policing themselves and using third-party metrics metrics or, you know, agencies that measure the
Getting
true-
a watchdog.
Getting a watchdog is it takes lawsuits. I mean, it's really what changes things. That's really what it takes. I mean, there has been a lot of noise, as you just said, about from advertisers, particularly from the larger advertisers, agencies, about, you know, we need to have some clear understanding of what we're buying here. What are we getting for this amount of money we're spending on this advertising? And they haven't. And sometimes many times it takes lawsuits to change the world, to change the way of doing business. I've seen that throughout my practice. Listen, the hepatitis C outbreak here in Nevada occurred because of two things that came to head. And it had a head-on collision. It happened here in Nevada, and that was improper injection practices by medical providers and a company who was selling much too large of vials to outpatient medical centers where they should have been selling just small vials or preloaded syringes, and that came to head. Well, as a result of those cases, I think Mark mentioned earlier, those cases, it changed both the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry, not just here in Las Vegas, across the country. Across the country, every hospital, every outpatient center in the country changed their injection practices to make them safer, and we got those large vials out of these outpatient medical centers so they weren't double dipping in them. The health providers weren't using them as multi-use vials, which they're not supposed to be used as, which provides a risk for spreading bloodborne diseases. But it took a lawsuit that went on years to change those things, and sometimes that's just what it takes to get to inspire these people to do the right thing.
It was a much needed lawsuit, and it turned out well.
And so I think that, you know, hopefully, I always like to see what is the benefit to the entire community, not just our clients with these type of cases. We want to change behavior for the better. Hopefully, this will change behavior. It will change not only Facebook's behavior, but other companies who sell online advertising to have third parties check and make sure that, hey, people are getting what they're told they're getting when they buy advertising.
Yeah, and I've seen advertisements. You know, I'll look at a local business here in Las Vegas advertising, and you'll see there's, you know, X amount of likes or followers on that business. But every so often you notice that there's some random individual from Thailand who's following them that they probably purchased a like from, and it's sort of like, what are you really getting? You know, you're a local laundromat here in Las Vegas, and you're advertising on Facebook, and you're buying, say it's likes or shares or something, and then you have these people from random aspects of the world that you're attracting. It just seems a little shady, to say the word.
Unfortunately, they might have paid some
Here or there.
potentially shady outfit to deliver X number of
Oh,
followers.
that too, yeah.
Lo and behold, most of them are from, you know, somewhere in Eastern Europe, and as you suggested, that doesn't do much good for a local community business.
Yeah.
And to back up for a moment, this is, because not everybody understands this, a lot of times they'll say, well, you know, Facebook is somewhat, you know, it has certain strengths. What happens is the average person, when they're putting things out there organically, they're saying, oh yeah, look at my, I've got this new restaurant, and they're not purchasing advertising. Facebook algorithms are very, very good at detecting a commercial message. Well, if you have 1,000 followers and you put this out organically to your followers, but you're asking to put out a commercial message, Facebook may send it out to 10 people. So when you get 3 likes or something, you go, wow, not many, 1,000. Well, nobody saw it. So what we're talking about is when you're adding a boost to that, and you know, right now the numbers are basically to reach 100,000 people, the potential of, so that you've got, you know, it passes on their timeline to reach 100,000. The going rate's about $800, say. And the reason that Facebook is such an attractive vehicle for advertisers is there's no waste in that. So if you're selling men's suits, and your men's suits that you're selling start at $1,000, you're not going to sell a lot of them to 15-year-old kids. You're not selling them a very small number to women who are buying them as gifts. So you can pull all these other demographics into the picture and decide exactly who you're going to. So people that are used to using it organically, they may not see the extreme power. When you think of Facebook, you think of it as a social media network. But the truth is if you only look at the dollars, it is only an advertising vehicle with all of this other stuff, just sort of a very neat packaging piece that gets everybody looking at that advertising. And that advertising, as we said, has become the powerhouse of the world. It's almost as if Major League Baseball came together so quickly that they didn't have time to hire any umpires. You know, there's nobody watching the game. So, well,
very good.
You're the home team. You get one of your guys behind the plate. He'll figure it out. Let him call it. And so part of it, I think, has to do with just the business dynamic of, you know, it took television decades to get to the point that it was a multi-billion-dollar vehicle, much less that there was only one company. They never achieved that. And so it took Facebook a few years to get to the point that it was...
Oh, it's ever evolving.
Yeah, and complete market dominance. Nobody else is close. We have done, Jeff and I have done one-on-ones with very wealthy people looking at looking at how much time they spent on every social media. And what you find out is that women in particular, very well-educated women in particular, they don't want to read about who got killed. They don't want to read about who burnt down. They'll rely on their friends to sort through major news vehicles so that they can get the kind of news that they want. These are well-educated people. They're very mindful about what comes into their house. They don't want bad energy in their house. And Facebook turns out to be a very good vehicle at that because you end up pulling in your friends, and that's who you're talking to.
And sometimes you get the alternative.
Yeah, that's spawned a lot of fake.
Get rid of that guy.
It spawned a lot of the fake news that
Yes.
we've had now. So
Yeah, it's really striking when we interview people face to face, and they're rather upscale, educated individuals, and their responses are very consistent across the board. Do you read the newspaper? I'll scan a headline on my mobile phone every now and then. How about the local news? Not really. If it's on in the background, maybe. How about Facebook? I check it 6 to 8 times before noon, and then another 10 to 12 times before midnight. Or I turn it on in the morning as soon as I wake up, and it stays on all day. It's just overwhelming.
And then to put this in perspective with that coveted audience you're talking about, upscale audience, we ask these questions. So are you on social media? Yes. Is that where you get the bulk of it? Yes. What do you follow? I'm on Instagram. Are you on Twitter? No, not really. Are you on this? Are you on Facebook? Yes. And when you add them all up, what you find is you can do business with any one of these other social media, but every single one of these people that are on these other media, they're all on Facebook. Yeah. So it begs the question, why would you go to these others when you can hit all of them on Facebook? And so that is what Facebook is. It's just this giant dominating force that has hit on this critical mass. They just missed their metrics by, it sounds like, a very wide margin according to their own admission.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if this lawsuit spawns into a third and a fourth as you start through discovery, start uncovering other hiccups in their
well, you know,
line of business.
That's you can't predict that. Obviously, we're going to be doing discovery and finding out.
Exactly. Fascinating discovery.
It will be fascinating to see, you know, what they're, you know. Right now, we're just talking about this case. We're just talking about the video advertising. We haven't even really got into the print advertising. You know, were their numbers correct on those? Nobody knows at this point.
Yeah, it sounds like Facebook doesn't even know.
Somebody was making assumptions, and I think what part of the original story that was telling was, you know, what it all came down to is there's a programmer sitting in a room back in the back room someplace, and their defense is they made the decision to not count anything that was under 3 seconds. And so that's probably the most expensive 3 seconds in the history of advertising.
Yeah, tech firms are known for moving quickly, making decisions at a rapid pace, and perhaps sometimes those aren't always for the best, or things get lost in the shuffle somewhat.
So given your experience with these types of just massive cases, does anybody ever make this kind of admission before you ever get to the courthouse steps?
Not this early. You know, it's usually you have to drag it out of them through many depositions of many players involved before, if they're going to admit something, they're going to admit something like that. And even still, they'll often settle the case without making these kind of admissions. So it was the day I'll always remember the day I picked up my copy of the Wall Street Journal, looked at that article in September of 2016, and I read that and I said, oh my goodness, this is huge.
It's like a just tectonic plate. And the thing that's funny about it, I don't quite understand the way this part of it works. Television, newspaper, they're the ones that all this money came from. It all shifted out of their balance sheets and across. But you don't see a Daily Hammer. You would expect they'd be getting the kind of coverage that Trump gets. You know, the ongoing disaster of the day thing, and it's just not happening. It's not drawing the kind of attention, and it is huge. We're talking.
Well, nobody's learned how to dominate the media better than Donald Trump.
That's right.
You know, every day, every hour, it's something new.
It's amazing. Today he called like a surprise. He had like a surprise announcement to the media, and it's like within minutes, everybody's at the steps of the White House, like getting in the room, and all the TV stations are ready for breaking, news. It's unbelievable.
And he inherited a mess, a 15 million job creating mess. Is that what it's 16 million? Is that how many jobs they said that was created?
He doesn't.
He calls it
part
a
of
mess.
Facebook, does he?
He's more of a Twitter guy.
Yeah, and evidently, to put things in perspective, even he hasn't been able to help Twitter's base, and that continues. That's like a bottomless pit. So that there's an alternate social medium that hasn't benefited at all from what we're seeing happen on Facebook. So, given your experience with this type of complex litigation, how long before this starts getting traction, before we do start seeing things really pop? And is this a 2-year case, a 3-year, 5-year?
Well, it's hard to say how long the case goes on. I mean, some companies, for public relation reasons and to not cause any further damage to their stock prices, will try to settle these cases early, and will try to regain that public confidence by coming out with some policies and procedures and saying, hey, we know we have a problem here, we made a mistake, we're now going to fix it, and this is what we're going to do, and we're going to settle this lawsuit and put this behind us. Other companies take the opposite track. They take a real hard-nosed position. They make you, for example, the hepatitis C cases, and we had to try 4 cases. We didn't quite finish the 4th case, but we had to go through 4 jury trials and years of trying cases, because each one of those cases went for 4 or 5 months in trial. Some of them take that hard-nosed attitude and says, go prove this in a court of law and make you go the distance before they sit down and settle. They make you get, a verdict essentially, or multiple verdicts in some cases. So it's hard to predict. I've never sued Facebook before. I don't know how they're going to react. So it's just hard to say. I mean, it could go on for years, or it could resolve quicker than that. And that's really, these type of cases, that's really up to the defendants, what they want to do.
And it is a tremendous brand. They have built, and up until this last year, really an unblemished brand. This was their first hiccup, really.
Yeah, that I can see, they really have done a phenomenal job with their brand, and they've satisfied a lot of customers, and I think they've satisfied a lot of advertisers too. And that's not really the point, though. I think they have the advertisers have been, for the most part, many of them have been satisfied with their response. But the point is, they didn't get what they paid for, what they were being told that they were buying, and that makes a difference.
It all comes down to money at the end of the day.
Yeah, if you're getting 10% returns, on an investment, you're happy as a clam until you go back and read that they were promising you 15% returns and said this is what you're getting.
Right. And of course, the stockholders, the shareholders, I mean, they were blind to the whole thing. They had no idea what was going on. They're buying Facebook stock because either their brokers are putting them in this stock because their brokers know, hey, this company is growing. Look at how they're increasing their advertising dollars every day. They're about to take over, literally take over the advertising dollars that used to go to cable and network TV. So Facebook looks like a great investment, and I'm sure a lot of people have made money off their Facebook investments. But what happened here with them not disclosing this information to their shareholders, to the public, in their quarterly filings, and keeping this, not disclosing it, and then at the same time selling their own stock, that's a problem. That's just not permitted.
Have you been getting much requests for info from journalists or newspapers or anything lately yet? Or?
I have. When we first filed the first case, I got quite a few responses, and I didn't talk to anybody at the time because I knew that we were going to be filing an amended complaint. I just wasn't really in a position at that point to deal with the media. And when the second case got filed, the shareholders case, again, I got some people, and mostly the places like Bloomberg and the Wall Street Journal, national publications, but I didn't really talk to them, again, because we were getting the case in order, and I just didn't feel that we should just go run to the media. And so at this point, there's been some coverage, but we haven't done anything to try to get more coverage.
Throw much publicity onto it.
Yeah, I mean, that's not what we're about, but I suspect once the case really starts getting going, but both of the cases really start getting going, and discovery starts happening, motions start getting filed, at that point, I think probably it'll get a lot more media coverage. It usually does.
All right, and with that, we will call it a day. The Vegas Legal Podcast. I want to thank you, Robert Eglet, senior partner at Eglet Prince Law Firm, for joining us today. Tyler Morgan, publisher of Vegas Legal Magazine. Thanks for doing the good work and bringing some new life to the legal community in Southern Nevada. Jeff Haney, Vice President of Fiero Communications, the friendliest PR firm in Las Vegas. And to all of you out there with a story idea, an axe to grind, get a hold of Vegas Legal, the leading legal magazine in Southern Nevada. You can call Tyler Morgan at
702-222-3476.
Reach out, tell your friends. Have a good one.
We're out of here.